Okay, land use implications of high-speed rail. This is the work of Omar Peters, Scott Workman, Christine Earhart, Wayne Seward, and Lawrence LeClaire. A little introduction. We're going to be talking about station planning, station area planning, transit-oriented development, and APA's land use classification system. Station planning. Big function of station planning is make it into a transit center. It allows for train maneuvering. Whenever trains pull into stations, they've got to actually maneuver around, shift, load and unload passengers, passenger arrival and departures. To plan a station, first obviously have to have the tracks. Stations must reach the most passengers, so it's important to put them in a core of a location, never out in the field somewhere. It's really funny, the French have something called a beat field rail station. And beat fields are rail stations that they cheaply built out in the middle of, outside of town. So just illustrates the importance of putting a station inside where people are going to use it. And then you've got to make the stations user-friendly. Stations need to serve as a gateway to the city. They've got to be located within the city fabric in a central location to be supported by TOD, which we'll get into here in a bit. They've got to become accessible locations for pedestrians. That's going to be the primary means for anybody that's within that central area where that station's at to access that is through pedestrian means. And they've got to support public and multimodal transit because not everybody obviously can locate in one spot. And we've got to discourage automobile use, but responsibly handle parking situations by tying it into the urban fabric, maybe putting it underground, maybe concealing it away behind a building. Station area planning is, you have to focus heavily on preservation. A lot of, rail's been around in America for 150 plus years, 160, 170 now. And so, reusing existing stations and the neighborhood character to build up to the code. You need to employ infill mechanisms to create new stations in the urban fabric of a city if you can't use like an existing station. And you've got to use station planning for redevelopment initiatives, redeveloping existing parcels and neighborhoods through transit-oriented development. Stations in surrounding areas need to have good ground floor transparency. They need to provide ample space and active sidewalks. They need to have a clear entrance that denotes where the train station is. It has to be a location. I don't know if you've ever been in of course you all have like Penn Station or Grand Central or South Station, but you know you've arrived somewhere when you come to the train station. They need to have traffic calming implementations all over the streets around the stations. These are important to make it a place where pedestrians can operate in the area. They need to also have successful open spaces around. And they need to enhance the neighborhood through quality materials, public art, and landscaping. Density, TOD, land use, and land use guidelines. One of the most crucial things to implementing high-speed rail and having it be successful is that you have to dedicate the land use to high-density development around station areas. It removes the friction of distance, so you might as well remove it from the station area as well. You're gaining this huge asset, increasing your accessibility and mobility through high-speed rail. Why not also make the community around it accessible to pedestrians and transit? So transit-oriented development, what is it? TOD is known as high-density mixed-use development. It's development that's been integrated into a walkable neighborhood that is within 1/2 mile, and actually, as Wayne pointed out, people are willing to walk a bit further, so it should also probably include the 1 mile catchment area. TOD seeks to integrate housing, retail, and commercial development within that walkable neighborhood area. So how does it apply? Typically, TOD, we read about it being a component of like bus and transit, local city transit. How does it apply to high-speed rail? Planning for TOD occurs at a lot of different levels. It occurs on the regional, corridor, the station area, and the parcel level. High-speed rail focuses primarily on the region and the corridor level, but local planning, the station area, and the parcels surrounding are also very important to maximize the potential. High-speed rail often serves daily commuters in areas located in suburban station areas. These are housing-oriented regions where there's not really an existing downtown. So, you know, places like on the California high-speed rail route, places like Gilroy, San Jose, those are what you could call an emerging downtown or suburban commuter area. And TOD will seek to maximize the investments at any of these places, not just in big cities. So in order to assess what is needed to develop high-speed rail, it's important to know what sort of typologies you have in your high-speed rail station areas. There's a group called Spur out of California, and they've identified 5 different land use typologies. These are traditional downtowns in central business districts. New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Washington, San Francisco would be good examples. These are large cities, they have a dense core, and land values are very high. You have emerging downtowns and new business districts, which are what you could call like San Jose, California, you could call maybe in Albany, not really sure, that might be a market challenge downtown. But these are cities that are smaller, they have lots of potential, they're located in a region that is prosperous, and there's no reason they too can't be a part of that larger agglomeration economy. Suburban commuter stations are going to play an active role in high-speed rail land use planning. Not every train is going to stop in a big city. It's also going to have to pick up commuters from different places or passengers or travelers. Airports are also going to play another role because whenever you develop around an airport, we'll get to this in a bit, you've got to maximize the amount of connections plus the land use around an airport, which has a lot of uses. And then last, you've got market challenged downtowns. Those are places that high-speed rail has the potential to revitalize and change their economic outlook by removing the friction and distance between them and economic places like the traditional downtowns and central business districts. So special considerations for airports with regards to land use planning. It's a good idea to make them a destination place. A lot of airports aren't really a destination, although some are. This means that they have the ability to have linkages to many cities in a corridor to one large airport. It's important to put in hotels and convention centers to capitalize on the mix of traffic from high-speed rail plus the traffic from air travel. And also, they serve as a major reduction in short-haul flights, which is both, it's costly, it's not very energy efficient, and it reduces congestion, which along the Boston-Washington corridor, we know that it's not a good scene. There's way too much traffic in the air market. So within those regions, you've got to follow, there's 5 guidelines that have been identified by the California High-Speed Rail Authority, and they say that higher density is important, mixed-use development. They recommend gridded street patterns that are compact and pedestrian-oriented, and context sensitivity. Not every place is going to be a large downtown. You've got to recognize that commuter stations are going to mainly serve residential, and then you've got to have limited parking and possibly, Donald Shoup might like this, but market-based solutions to parking. So the LCBS, the LBCS, the Land-Based Classification Standards, were developed in 1996 by the APA and the Federal Highway Administration. They were developed to allow agencies across different jurisdictions at the local, state, regional, and national level to share land use classification data. They include symbology standards for geographic information systems classification based on 5 dimensions: activity level, function of the location, the structures that are on the location, the actual site, and who owns the property. And they allow jurisdiction with each high-speed rail stations to classify their land use and share information. Here's a graphic on the land-based classification system. This is actually, the top one here is the activity level. So this tells you what, whether it's shopping, residential, commercial, travel, like streets, railways, no human activity, leisure, natural resources, those are some of the categories. There's a function group, which is, it goes into like what the actual function is of the area. It's agriculture, forestry. There's a structural level to it, where it talks about what kind of buildings are located, whether they're apartments, residential buildings, institutional or community community buildings. There's sites which talk about if they have buildings or not, and then there's an ownership level which it demonstrates what if it's private, public, or not applicable at the bottom. So conclusions and recommendations for implementing high-speed rail. The big issue is pedestrian-oriented with lots of transit connections. They need to be situated in central cities to capture increased ridership and focused development. They can be used as a tool for shaping the built environment. It's important to understand the city's topologies where high-speed rail is implemented to create the best use of the cities. To create high-density mixed-use development, serving a wide variety of uses, incorporating transit-oriented development into station area development, and then making use of the APA's LVCS land use classification system to standardize stationary planning across jurisdictions. So, thank you very much.